I'm joined now by Leader Jeffries. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Great to see you.
So we are in the midst now where more and more Republicans are agitating to ignore court orders as they relate to pushing back against Donald Trump's worst impulses. As this impending constitutional crisis comes more into view, what's your level of worry about what we're contending with?
Well, this is a moment where there are far-right extremists who are trying to effectively end America as we know it. And one of the most important parts of America is the adherence to the rule of law. And that in this country, nobody is above the law. And yet we see Republicans threatening to defy the federal courts. That is something that everyone should be troubled by. It's one of the reasons why we just launched a rapid response task force and litigation working group that will be led by Congressman Joe Neguse, as well as Congressman Jamie Raskin, to make sure that we are pushing back aggressively from a litigation standpoint and anticipating the possibility of noncompliance.
Do you anticipate that they will ignore court orders?
We got a briefing from Representative Jamie Raskin earlier this morning, and he indicated that so far the federal courts are holding, and the administration has not aggressively moved in that direction, notwithstanding some of the rhetoric that we've heard that's irresponsible from people like the vice president.
What do you say to these Republicans who for so long have beat their chests about being the party of law and order, who are now coming out and saying, you know what, if some of these court orders don't comport with our political agenda, screw it?
Truth be told, Republicans have become the party of lawlessness and disorder. They're phony when it comes to the notion that they respect the rule of law. One of the reasons why we know that to be the case is that in the aftermath of the irresponsible pardoning of violent felons who brutally beat police officers and were then released into the community, many of my Republican colleagues embraced it. They're phony when it comes to pretending to be the party of law and order.
We've seen as Trump has kind of heaped more and more influence onto Elon Musk, this lack of adherence to any facts. I mean, this notion, the lie that $50 million worth of condoms were being sent to Gaza when that wasn't the truth, and yet these people who have these massive platforms will say them anyway, knowing that, okay, if anything is wrong, we can just go back afterwards and try and fix it. But by that point, the toothpaste is already out of the tube, right? That ship has already sailed. And so what do you say to these Republicans then, like Elon Musk, who are so quick to perpetuate these lies with so little willingness to actually adhere to the truth about them?
Flooding the zone with outrage and with lies is an intentional strategy that the extreme MAGA Republicans and the far-right extremists have adopted, and we've got to confront that strategy aggressively. We also have to know who we're dealing with in terms of their approach, and it's clear to me, it's a threefold approach. One, facts don't matter. Two, hypocrisy is not a constraint to their behavior. They don't give a damn if they say one thing and are doing the exact opposite. And third, they actually believe that shamelessness is a superpower. And so in dealing with that kind of diabolical intensity, we have to meet it every day, every week, every month, every year with righteous intensity.
How do you confront an opposition for whom facts don't matter, reality doesn't matter, and they can just kind of perpetuate their own reality that they want to put forward? How do you deal with that with a caucus that is going to be reliant on facts and that is grounded in reality? That the asymmetry is so vast there. So in this media environment where already Republicans have a bigger megaphone than Democrats, if they're not grounded in any semblance of shared reality, how do we push back against that?
They're going to flood the zone with lies. We got to flood the zone with truth. And of course, rise to the occasion, meet the moment, and engage everywhere that the American people can be found. And we're continuing to encourage, all of the members of the House Democratic Caucus to be in the community, be in the streets, be in the churches, be in the synagogues, be in the mosques, be in the barbershops and the beauty salons, be at the sporting events, and engage directly with the American people so we can combat the lies that are perpetuated intentionally to try to throw off half the country, if not more.
We saw Trump sweep into office amid promises of lowering costs. He himself said that groceries are why he won this election. Then, of course, we have the Doge Commission, whose purported goal was to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. What does it say that the first targets of Doge were not, for example, the Pentagon, which has failed 7 audits, but instead the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which has returned $21 billion to 205 million consumers, or USAID, which is half of 1% of the federal budget, delivers HIV prevention, water, clean water, food for famine survivors, and also engenders soft power for Americans across the world. That those are the targets for somebody who purports to want to root out waste, fraud, and abuse.
This administration is making America weaker across the world and creating the space for people like China and Russia to step in, while hurting everyday Americans. Captain Chaos and the extreme MAGA Republicans spent last year promising to lower the high cost of living and running away from Project 2025 as if it didn't exist. They've spent this year implementing the most extreme parts of the Project 2025 agenda, which will hurt the American people, while doing nothing, not a single thing, not a single bill, not a single idea, not a single plan to lower the high cost of living. In fact, the cost of groceries is going up, not down, including but not limited to the price of eggs. We've got to hold the Republicans accountable, and we will, for the lies and the broken promises that they've told to the American people.
What do you make of their conspicuous silence on that point? I mean, I cannot tell you the amount of times that we heard about the price of eggs in the lead up to this election, and now that we have the price of eggs nearly doubled, there is, crickets from the right, and suddenly the issue of high prices for groceries is no longer an issue.
We cannot let the Republicans get away with their silence and inaction as it relates to the high cost of living in the United States of America. It's a problem. Housing costs are too high. Grocery costs are too high. Insurance costs are too high. Utility costs are too high. And child care costs are too high. America is clearly too expensive. That's a problem that has to be fixed. The Republicans, who now control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, promised to work to try to solve that problem. They have no interest in doing so. It was a lie. And we've got to make it clear to the American people. They broke that promise, but House Democrats are determined to keep it, because we do believe that we have to build an affordable economy, that everyone in this country should have an opportunity to live the great American middle class dream, not simply to survive day to day, but to thrive.
What is the House caucus doing different now that we're in the aftermath of an election cycle where we underperformed across all demographic groups, across all states, lost the House, lost the Senate, lost the White House? So what is your conference doing that's going to be different as we move forward?
The Republicans in the last election cycle inexplicably had an advantage as it relates to many Americans, including increasingly communities of color, on the economy. And so we have to make clear to everyday Americans that we hear you, we see you, and we feel you as it relates to making life better for you, making life more affordable. It's not too much to ask in the United States of America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, that if you work hard and play by the rules, you can provide a comfortable life for yourself and for your family. That's our objective, and we have to do a better job as Democrats in making clear to the American people that that is what will drive us. At the same time, of course, pushing back against the reckless, extreme Republican efforts to fundamentally change America as we know it.
There are folks, though, who will look at what's happening right now and be concerned about the prospect of Democrats being able to succeed moving forward, given some of the ways that Donald Trump is trying to dismantle the federal government. Do you share those concerns, or do you have some some words to reassure folks who are looking at this and saying, like, it's cute that we think that there's going to be elections moving forward, or there's going to be the rule of law moving forward, given the speed with which he has tried to dismantle everything thus far.
We have to look at this, I think, in 3 short stages. We can't look at it as what's going to happen in 4 years. There'll be an opportunity, we'll make sure of that there's a presidential election, but there's an urgency to the moment that we're in right now. How are we pushing back aggressively and necessarily in the first 100 days? That's the fight that's in front of us at this moment. And it's a struggle that is playing itself out in Congress, in the courts, and in the community. And it's an all-hands-on-deck effort to aggressively push back against the extremism that is being intentionally unleashed on the American people. Then we've got to get through this first year, and then of course we have to get to the midterm elections as it relates to the ability of House Democrats to regain the gavels and take back control of the Congress, because the Republicans at this point are compliant. They're sycophants. They're not interested in working for the American people, because they're working for Captain Chaos and his buddies like Elon Musk.
We've seen the way that Trump has kind of usurped power from the Republican conference in the House. Recently, Mike Johnson, I believe it was within the last 24 hours, came out and said that he's fine with this process of allowing Trump to basically take the autonomy of your colleagues on the right. What's your response to Mike Johnson, who, instead of jealously guarding the prerogatives of the legislative branch, is content to contract that power over to Trump?
We work for the American people. And the folks who send us to Washington to serve them, to make life better on their behalf, to protect their interests, to give them an opportunity to experience the American dream. We don't work for Donald Trump. We are a separate and co-equal branch of government. That should mean something. That means fundamentally that we work on behalf of everyday Americans. It's irresponsible that the so-called Republican leadership has simply fallen in line. They're hurting their own constituents. That's the reality of the situation. But the biggest hustle is the fact that House Republicans are planning to hurt everyday Americans by doing things like destroying Medicaid. Hospitals will close. Nursing homes will shut down. Children, people with disabilities, and seniors are going to get hurt all across America. In the inner city, in rural America, in suburban America, in the heartland of America, and in small town America. And so we're preparing to fight these policy battles on behalf of the American people, and we've got to make it plain what they're trying to do, like in Medicaid as we know it, and why they are trying to do it, which is because at the end of the day, they want to pass massive tax cuts for their billionaire donors and wealthy corporations, and then stick working class Americans with the bill.
And we've seen this theme before. And so what's your reaction to Trump having run in 2016 and winning with this whole populist shtick, this idea that he's going to bring down the cost of healthcare, that he's going to make it more comprehensive and more affordable, that he's going to pass a middle-class tax cut, that he's going to usher in a jobs boom, a manufacturing renaissance? At the end of the day, in his first term, he didn't do any of that. He passed a tax cut that overwhelmingly favored millionaires and billionaires. 83% of the benefits were conferred to the top 1%. Did the same thing in this election cycle, where he swept into office amid promises that he's going to lower the cost of eggs. Eggs, again, to your exact point, are double the price that they were before he took office, and yet now his focus is on slashing programs like Medicaid, which overwhelmingly benefit sick and disabled folks and children. And so, what do you say to his supporters out there, voters who believed him, given what we've seen in the first term and what we're seeing right now?
Extreme MAGA Republicans promised to lower the high cost of living. Costs aren't going down, they're going up. And they're going up in part because Republicans are doing things not to make life better for everyday Americans. They are driven by a desire to enact massive tax cuts for their billionaire buddies and wealthy corporations. We've seen it over and over again.
Right.
That was the case under President Reagan. That was the case under President George W. Bush. That was the case as it relates to Donald Trump's first term. And they're running that same play again. We're not going to let them get away with fooling the American people. And in fact, what we've seen, because the American people know our costs going down, is the cost of living that has been crushing us, particularly in light of the post-pandemic inflation. Is that getting better or is it getting worse? The reality is it's getting worse. And the Republicans are not going to be able to run away from that fact. As Democrats, we'll have a responsibility to make clear how, in fact, we are going to focus on lowering housing costs or lowering the cost of groceries, lowering childcare costs, and making life more affordable. That's our commitment, and we're going to relentlessly communicate that to the American people, while at the same time holding Republicans accountable for their broken promises.
Leader Jeffries, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.